evening and welcome back to Checkpoint here on KTN News. Tonight with us is Henry Rotich, CS Treasury. Before we proceed, there's a question here, Bona CS. Someone has asked following our conversation on the housing. Jackie Kinywa at Kinywa 40 says, I'm paying a mortgage and I already have a house. Why am I being forced into the affordable housing plan and I already have a house?
Well, you know, to achieve this very noble idea of getting affordable houses, it only makes sense if we have all Kenyans contributing for this cause.
It's not all Kenyans, it's only the ones on payroll, about what, 2 million, roughly?
Well, that's still good enough, you know, to achieve the type of housing that we want to achieve. Because as we contribute and get these houses, the person who is already living in a rented house will make a choice.
This one has a mortgage. They're saying they already have a house.
But that house, they must have bought it at a very high cost, I believe. But these houses are going to be houses that are affordable. And there will be no harm for that person to get a second house, or so to speak, under this affordable arrangement. The reason why that person is paying probably high mortgage now is because there were no affordable houses available.
But you see, the thing and the concern I see around the housing when you follow the discussions is, so this house has been done in a design that I've not contributed, been involved in. Everyone has a right to choose where they want to live. So when you tell this person they can have a second house, they'll be like, no, I want this one I'm living in, I am paying my mortgage, I am happy, and I do not want to have to pay any other money.
Well, by the way, we just to let you know that you will be contributing up to the time that you retire, and you actually have an option that if by then you don't have a house, you can take back your contribution and use it. So it's in a way a saving that that you use it maybe to enhance your pension. And again, you contribute at least for a maximum period of 15 years. So we have made it flexible in a way that as you contribute and it reaches a point where you say you don't need the house and you have retired, you will get back your money. So that's the plan.
Yeah. Let's listen to what President Uhuru Kenyatta had to say before he sent that memorandum back to Parliament that now, of course, we know is law, in as far as what is causing our cost of living to go up and why we must pay up.
As you can see, the enjoyment of the new rights that we gave ourselves in 2010 has been expensive and unprecedentedly so. We are all very proud of the speed with which we have implemented the new constitution and devolved government to the people, having already transferred over 1 trillion shillings to county governments since 2013. We will continue to protect and entrench devolution and our new constitutional order, notwithstanding the cost.
Devolution, that increase in representation is why we must contribute more to pay for this constitutional order. However, Parliament asked the Auditor General, sir, to conduct an audit of the costs and funding, how to fund this constitution, and whether in fact such an assertion would be true. And it found that, in fact, the biggest spenders, the money swallowers, if you like, is the big infrastructural projects. That when you look at devolution in of itself, the representation, it's not as high as the much money we are seeing this government spend on their flagship projects such as SGR. So that to blame devolution is ill-informed.
Well, look, we have to do these things simultaneously, you know. Just let's go back to 2013. What was obtaining there was that we had big infrastructural challenges, gaps to be filled. Yeah, energy costs were high. We had to invest on expansion of electricity and also access. That has largely been done and ongoing. We had transport challenges, the cost of transport making Kenya very uncompetitive. We had to address that issue. Hence, railway, roads, ports expansion, both in Mombasa, JKIA, and all others. So infrastructural deficits had to be filled. At the same time, we were to implement the Constitution in a big bang way. And that's the reason why 2013, some of the tax reforms, including the VAT, was actually limiting exemptions in a manner so that we are able to fund what we have set ourselves to do. Kenyans spoke in the new constitution. They wanted devolution, like yesterday. They wanted bicameral parliament, Senate and National Assembly. They wanted independent officers, 12 or 13 thereabout. That was what Kenyans want, and they have been yearning.
Yeah.
Those comes with a cost. It comes with a cost, especially the decision to implement within a very short time. Others have taken 10, 15 years to implement devolution in other countries. But in Kenya, we've done in the record 5 years. We have set up all independent offices up and running.
But I'll put this to you.
And all that.
The Auditor General, in that same report, finding that devolution was not the big driver of spending, also found that the repetition, what we call duplicity, is what I was looking for, is what is getting this to be expensive in terms of devolution, so that you have ministries still undertaking functions largely that, as we're talking about, even all the big four, housing, manufacturing, health, food security, agriculture, they're all devolved functions. But largely, we are seeing the national government taking them up. So there's that duplicity. Number two, the provincial administration, that you have all of these categories. Yes, there's need for government to have national government a say and some sense and feel on the ground, but a bigger part of that should be devolution, so that duplicity, rationalization, we've not seen national government do that to reduce that expense.
Well, that work is ongoing in a way, but let me say that all functions in 2013 that was assigned to county government, largely I would say 90% were transferred, and money was transferred. And they could have been a few parastatals that probably have been doing some concurrent functions. But there is no way we are currently doing agriculture, and now county governments are also doing the same. If what we are doing as national government, it's only we are trying to introduce a policy, and we work with the counties to change the policy through resources that the national government has provided. Let's take example the issue of the MES, medical leasing equipment.
Yes.
It was a policy of government to increase the infrastructure in all parts of the country. Health is a devolved function. So we had to go on as national government to lease these equipments and work with the counties, because...
But the issue here is big.
When you look at leasing, you cannot do leasing if it's not coordinated at national
But still,
level.
the national government is making decisions for county governments. For a devolved function, shouldn't it be the counties coming back to say, we want this, we need this, we can collaborate in this, so that it's not seen as if there's a lack of political will? But let's move on and
but
talk
there was
about...
consultation in that. They signed MOUs, so there's no overlap on
All right. Anthony Oluoch is saying, under the Jubilee administration, he tweets, since you were CS Treasury 2013, the country's debt has tripled, so that all the borrowing we are doing, we're not getting justification on projects, but we are borrowing to pay debts, we are borrowing to pay salaries.
Look, you know, that story keeps on being said. Anthony needs to know that before 2013, there was no railway. If there was, so if you compare 2013 and since independence to 2013, we have never built a standard gauge rail.
So let me put this other question then to you on the railway. Before we move on, your point is there's a railway now. There's Albris Otende here who says, every economic expert I've watched on TV says the SGR is not value for money, would have built it on much less. Those costs were inflated. It was not worth the while.
Well, I wish the person spent some time a little bit to look at the numbers. The costs of the railway and the rolling stocks that had to be done, and where we were building the railway. We were building a railway over almost half of it in the park. You had to do elevated lines. We had to do an ICD. So that person needs to look at the numbers and compare with what. You know, it is very simplistic just to wake up and say, you know,
even economists, and I've interviewed myself several, and they still say those numbers
the same economist,
don't add
even
up.
the same economist you're saying, I doubt whether they have looked at those numbers.
They do. That's why we only
let them come and let them table the numbers and tell us our railway in Kenya is more expensive than
Ethiopia.
And if they are the same railway we are talking about.
Ethiopia?
Yeah? Yes, Ethiopia is different. Also, you know, you have to look at the terrains it's passing. Was Ethiopia's railway, including rolling stock, where was it passing? It's not easy to compare, you know, that it was built in Ethiopia at X amount. It should have been built in Kenya the same amount. You need to look at what is the kind of railway there and what is our kind of railway here.
But then let me put this to you. The president was in China recently, and there's been talks about funds for extending phase 2 of SGR. But even the Chinese, who are so generous with giving money and loans, this time around say, hold up, let's do a feasibility study. Let there be, and yet the paperwork, according to the CS Transport before that meeting, had already all been settled. But they come back and say, no, let there be a feasibility done on the viability of this. That even them having looked at this SGR as is, don't see that this is being economically viable.
No, I think, let me correct that. The rail from Mombasa to Nairobi, which actually carries, I would say, maybe 70% of the cargo, was viable, definitely. But of course, when we now say we need to extend to Kisumu, Malaba, and the other part of the country, then the question comes in, then the 30% of the containers that are going to go out beyond Nairobi to Kisumu to Kampala, does it warrant that? That is the type of the conversation that is going on now. But you need to know that the standard gauge rail is a sort of a regional undertaking, so to speak. We're trying to unlock transport to the region. You know?
But other partners have skipped us and gone to work with other countries in the region because we are a more expensive partner.
I don't think that has happened yet. Yeah, we are discussing with Uganda. They are actually waiting for us, you know, because they can build their rail from Malaba to Kampala. If we have not connected from Nairobi to Malaba, it will just be hanging. You can't build something hanging somewhere. Okay, it has to be a seamless connection from Mombasa to Kampala and to Kigali.
So the question on debt tripled during this administration's reign, that we are borrowing, but we cannot pin to what this is going, and that in some cases we are borrowing to pay.
You can't see the railway?
That was the loan from China. So these are the loans we've been taking. The question is, we cannot today...
We can tell you. We just pick the...
So why has it tripled, the debt? Because then we're not seeing returns.
It's a combination of the rail that we have done. In the energy sector, quite a lot of transmission lines are happening because we have to evacuate the power in Lake Turkana. We have to evacuate the power in Olkaria, the 280 plus megawatts.
Yes.
We have to invest on transmission line. We have to invest on water, the dams. We have build roads.
So why do we need to do all these things at the same time? Because you're saying we are borrowing to invest.
Yes.
So why don't we do it sustainably? Why do we feel the need to do everything today so that we have a burden?
I've just told you that our debt is sustainable. So what's the problem? Yes.
But we're having to increase taxes and raise the cost of living for Wanjiko.
Yeah, the taxes are needed to fund other part of them recurrent expenditures that we have, and we've just mentioned about devolution and others. You know, we have introduced free day secondary. You know, we are paying for elderly people, cash transfers.
Yeah.
All the social investments that we are doing, we can't do that through borrowed money. So as we want to include everybody and everybody to enjoy prosperity and investing in social investments, those needs to be funded by taxes. And then we leave borrowing to infrastructure.
So we have not at any point borrowed to pay loans?
No.
We have not at any point borrowed to meet recurrent?
No, if you look at our budget, the revenues more than exceeds recurrent expenditure.
All right.
So clearly, we can borrow for recurrent.
And yet we are not.
Unlike other countries, by the way, that they are actually borrowing or taking grants. The countries that we are trying to compare ourselves with now are using grants from outside to pay salaries.
So there have been several tweets that I've received today, and our time is running out. Shem, Joseph have been talking about the president should not borrow anymore. This government has borrowed enough. If they borrow anymore, they should not ask us to pay. Justin says, why do we keep borrowing? Why don't we find other creative ways of raising revenue? But let me put this question to you. DJ Swift says, I'm a contractor. This government has 200 billion in pending bills. Why aren't they paying contractors?
Well, we are actually continuing to pay that as we speak now. As you know, we have already loaded development budgets. We are asking ministries to bring especially the AGBO.
Yes.
As we are putting a lot of priority. So we are pushing that and making sure that.
But it takes very long to be paid. Well, doing business with government.
Some of course, you know, some of them also includes also county governments that are also supposed to pay, and we have already asked them also to prioritize and pay. But you know, some of these pending bills sometimes have created some challenge because a lot of them have come under dispute in some cases. Yeah, like for example, NYS money has been put on hold. Look at, for example, the issues of the farmers now.
Okay.
We have not paid, and you know the reasons are very clear. They have been verified and all that. So you cannot just blame it and say the government has not paid bills. So the other agencies are doing some work which are critical, and we are waiting those to happen so that we can pay. But I want to assure Kenyans that they will be paid, and we are pushing money now to ministries for them to pay all pending bills.
Many of the economic, analysts are talking about government should be focusing more on cutting expenditure, that this country has very vibrant conversations about how we'll spend money, but not enough, and which would be more important, conversations about baking the cake. Do you agree?
Well, what have we not done about really addressing the cutting costs? You saw even
we've created more positions. The president has. CAS says that's more bill. That does not speak to confidence of a government serious on cutting down.
Yeah, of course, you know, the recent increases by the CAS was needed sometimes because also on the demand on the executive. Look, for example, I want to give you the time I spent also addressing the issues from the legislature. You know, we also have to appear before many parliamentary meetings. And
so you don't see expenditure as a problem?
We are working to clean it up, definitely, you know. This year, as you know, we did what I call zero-based budgeting. We went through every manner of expenditure we have in the budget to ensure that there are no expenditures which are really low priority that are there. And we did that exercise very prudently, such that as we speak now, the ministries are really working on a very prudent budget. And we want to safeguard this going forward, that we don't want new low priority expenditure creeping up as we go forward. So we've done that step, and we continue to ensure that there is prudency in expenditure. So we cannot always, talk of there's a lot of wastage, there's a lot of government is addressing that. So what the president is doing also on the part of ensuring the governance has been improved in many areas. All these are a package of reforms that are needed for us to ensure that our expenditures that we have planned to execute are prudent and Kenyans get value for their money, the taxes that they are paying.
All right. There's so much feedback. I don't think I've seen so many messages. They are flying in so fast. I'm told our time is up, but I
hope they are not repeating.
I will tell you this. Some of the concerns that are coming through is, you saw the MPs, some who have called for your impeachment in the past. There are some here who are asking, why don't you resign? Because we do not think you're handling our till properly. There's concern that things are looking south, but you do not appear to see the picture they are seeing. Another one says, Jackson Musyoka, that at the end of the day, we are more deeper in debt. They are painting an optimistic picture. I'm feeling the pain. Why doesn't CS just say, I've done my best, I can't do more? Would you consider that?
That's, what runs nowadays in the social media is sometimes very lack of information, and that is why, people just write whatever they want to write. But the figure speaks for itself. You can say anything, and this is the freedom actually this constitution provided for, and we respect that. But as far as we know, the figures of economic growth that came out on Friday. We are doing 6.3 economic growth. And if you are doubting these,
there's some argue also elitist conversations that Wanjiko, with paying more taxes, does not understand how that 6.3 growth is helping them.
First, if you didn't have that growth, things would have been a different story. We are working towards 10% growth because we think that if we do 10, we will make more impact in terms of job creation and all that. But 6.3 is way above even the sub-Saharan average.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, and just give me a number because we're way over our time. My director keeps telling me to wind up. How is the state of Kenya's economy? 1 being bad, 10 being very strong.
I would put it that we are in the range of upper quarter, which is 7.5.
7.5.
To going towards 10. And clearly, economic growth is rebounding. Inflation, exchange rate are stable. Those are the parameters you should look. If those things go wayward, then there's an issue in the economy.
And as we go, put up that, please, if you may, Director, that quote, and not quote from an article that David Ndi wrote on the East African, just very quickly to see what he thinks about some of what you're saying as we go to break and bring you sports news in just a short while. I believe it's been put up now. We'll be able to see. This is what he had to say, so I'll leave you with this quote as I read it from here. The Jubilee administration gambled on mega infrastructure projects to expand the economy. It has borrowed heavily to finance them. Over the past 5 years, it has conjured up a misleading set of economic data that paints a rosier picture than the grim reality now confronting the country. What is this fantasy in aid of? That is what one of the economists that time and again opines has had to say.
You know, any economist can say anything. Yeah. Yeah. Because it depends on what assumptions he's making.
All right.
Yeah. But what we know that the numbers do not support what he says. So he could be saying out of other reasons.
Yeah. Fair enough. We'll leave it there. Henry Rotich, CS Treasury, I thank you for making time for us. We definitely need a longer session, and Kenyans, so many messages.
We are available to explain to Kenyans, especially those who are very pessimistic about the economy. Actually, they should go to other countries like South Africa and other neighboring countries, and then we'll compare.
Okay.
And then they will tell us whether really Kenya is doing bad.
All right, we have to take a break. Robinson Okenya is coming up next with your sports news. Stay with us.